Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch Podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and most importantly, our personal power. Hello, witches, and thanks for tuning in to episode 45 of the podcast, all about spellcasting. Yeah. So I'm going to be talking about how and why witches cast spells, how they use magic. I have a story about the first spell that I ever tried. And I'm going to be telling you how to design and write out your own spells so that you can start casting them right away, whenever you feel comfortable. And I'm going to talk a little bit about troubleshooting and why some spells might fall flat. Of course, I've also got some book recommendations for those of you who want to learn more or get started casting some magic spells right away. I'm pretty excited about this one. So I was inspired to do this episode yet again by the Witch and Bitch, my private group. So I pull tarot cards every year. So I pull 12, one for each month of the year, and then one to represent energy to focus on all year long. And then I, use those cards to decide what we're doing that month. So the card that I drew in the position for the energy of 2019, that card was called Spellcasting from the Book of Shadows Tarot. The Book of Shadows Tarot, I've used part 2 a lot on Instagram, but not so much part 1 because it's a 2-deck system. So there is as above and so below. The whole set is based on Wiccan religion, principles, practice, and then daily life. As above, the first deck doesn't really have the same structure as tarot. It has the same number of cards, but they're very different. And it subs in multiple magical and spiritual practices and concepts and characters from Wicca. In traditional decks, this card is strength, and it's all about mastering ourselves, working with the universe, and wielding energy to create change. And this is what I feel casting spells is all about. That's it. You are working with the energy of the universe to try to create change in your life. And unfortunately, that can be really hard to actually start doing. I mean, I'm including myself in this. There was my phone. I'm including myself in this problem. I often still struggle to cast actual spells. I've learned that giving witchcraft a try, you read about it or you hear about it and you think, wow, this is really neat. And a lot of the times, the reason people think it's so neat is the idea of casting spells and using magic. How great and fun and exciting does that sound, right? But then you can end up feeling a little too awkward or inexperienced, and you don't really cast any. And this is a pretty common experience. I've been through this, okay? I just want to reiterate, I've been through this multiple times. So today, we're going to explore exactly how you go about using all of those correspondences that you see on Pinterest or in Books of Shadows. We're going to talk about the sketchy herbs in your cupboard that you can use and all of the other magical working advice that I give you on this show all the time. I'm going to tell you how to actually use that to create a magic spell or ritual. So let's start from the beginning. And what even is casting a spell? What does that mean? Now, if you've been a witch for kind of a while, this might all seem like beginner stuff. But I have been a witch for 20 plus years, and listen, sometimes I still have problems getting into the right frame of mind for casting a spell. I can go very, very long periods of time without ever doing it, and then I feel a little guilty. So don't think this is just for beginners, but if you've never cast a spell before, that's really who this is aimed at. So what are magic spells? It has this very fantasy ring to it, right? And if you look up any sort of definitions for the word spell, you're basically just looking at a thesaurus page. The word spell itself, it just comes up with incantations or charms or enchantments or mantras, magic words, ritual, prayer. All of these are considered spells. A spell itself is just a way of tapping into an energy source and then using that energy to affect change in the world around you. And there's lots of different energy sources to tap into. So whether you're saying abracadabra or lighting a candle, this is spellcasting. That's what all of that is. Within Wicca and other like Wicca adjacent pagan religions, ones that include witchcraft, spellcasting is a lot like prayer. It's their version of prayer. You can cast spells alone for purposes that only you know, or you can work with a group, like a coven or a congregation, and pool your energy together for a common purpose. So your spells can involve a nice big ritual with lots of different elements like candles and incense and blessed water or wine or whatever. You can be wearing robes, or it can be said out loud, it can be said quiet. Either way, this is spellcasting. Spellcasting can be illuminating, rapturous, life-changing, scary, beautiful, or full-on just not what we expected at all. A lot like prayer or any other religious activity as far as I'm concerned. So if you've ever felt like you're not a witch or you're not a real witch because you don't cast spells, or even if the idea of doing that just doesn't really jive with you in your practice, don't feel like that. I've talked before that in this day and age, there's so much more to get from the image and archetype of the witch than just something religious. I talked about that a lot when I talked about witches, sluts, feminists. You know, there's power and there's energy in the title and in the persona of witch, whether you actually cast magic specifically or not. Casting spells is a big part of being a witch for a lot of people. And for other people, maybe that's just not cool. Maybe they like meditations, or maybe they use affirmations or mantras. Maybe they actually go to church and pray. There's Christian witches out there. Maybe their yoga practice is their version of casting spells or of making magic. Right? There's so many different ways. I feel like a lot of times we get very caught up in the words casting spells and we go to this fantasy place or this Harry Potter place even. You know, you might go to a nice big old cauldron in like, I don't know, like Camelot, or you might go to Hogwarts, who knows. You might even go somewhere totally different. We get caught up, I think, in that image a lot, and we don't really focus on what it means to cast a spell. That's just using up some spiritual energy to, you know, reach your goals. Now, a lot of those things I assumed, that assumes you don't cast spells because you don't want to. There are also a lot of people that want to explore magic this way, but feel intimidated or frightened, or they feel like they don't have the right stuff, you know? So, so you might not cast spells because you don't feel that, or calling it casting spells doesn't seem right. But I know there's a lot of you out there that so want to do this. They so want to work with magic this way, but they're having a really hard time getting started. And not having the right stuff is a big one. You know, they don't have a big full Wiccan altar set up, complete with, you know, this outrageously cool spell cupboard full of herbs and wonderful scary things like Eyes of Newt, you know, magic wand and a spooky broom and a black cat. Like, you don't need all that stuff, but a lot of people get really wrapped up in the fact that they don't have all of the tools of witchcraft. You know, you can't get started if you don't have the tools. A lot of people also don't have an appropriate place to kind of pull out all the stops, right? Maybe they can't light candles and incense where they live. You know, maybe it's totally illegal to like sacrifice a frat boy or dance naked under the full moon. You know, just witchy things. Sometimes you just can't get that stuff done. Sometimes. But the biggest roadblock for spell casting, I think, is confidence. Confidence is so hard to work up for, like anything, for a lot of people. And for magic, it's very easy to feel like you don't trust yourself and your power anyways. So what's the point? And that's really sad, because that's not the truth. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to work around any of these problems that you might feel that you have, so that you can feel comfortable harnessing your own personal magic and making up your own magic spells. Before I get really into it, casting spells is a very individualized experience, you know. Just like anything else, I can teach you a prayer, I can give you the script, but I can't tell you what the only way to pray is. That's just not how it works. So I can't guarantee that anything or everything that I share here will help every single witch. All I can do is share my own experiences and the stuff that I've learned and the stuff that worked for me or didn't in my 20-ish years as a witch. Witchcraft, when you get right down to it, is really about discovery. And a lot of that discovery is something you have to do for yourself. Not everything's going to work for everybody. And I don't want everything to work for everybody. That would be just so dull. So let's start with our big hurdle there. Let's start with confidence. Not having the confidence to cast a spell or use magic. No judgment. I totally get it. I have totally, absolutely felt that lack of confidence. Sometimes I even still struggle to feel confident in my own power, and I feel really weird and silly performing some spells like I'm doing a play. I've never really felt confident speaking spells out loud around other people. When I worked with a group before, when we were coming up with rituals for whatever, for the full moons or anything, they had different, little jobs for everyone to do in the ritual if they wanted to. You could also just show up and, join in. But you could choose to be involved. And I love to be involved. But I always requested to have silent tasks. I didn't want to speak anything out loud. Isn't that strange? Doesn't that seem weird for a podcaster? I love talking. I love it. When I'm not talking to you guys through this microphone, I'm talking someone else's ear off. I promise. Even if it's my cat. So I know that words have power. I get messages from you guys all the time. I've been doing this for years now, and I still get messages from people telling me that something I said was totally inspirational, which still shocks me every time. But I know that words have power, and I know that even my own voice does have power. I have evidence. But for whatever reason, I feel really self-conscious wielding that power around other people. Even, I podcast alone, right? All of my interviews, those were all done via Skype. And there's no visual. I don't do Skype with a video most of the time. My webcam's just completely covered up. And when I was interviewed on the Cannabis Act, whatever, a month ago, when they first were like, "Oh, cool, come on down to the studio," I had this horrible moment where I realized, oh my God, I'm going to have to be Paige the podcaster in front of other people. It's very, very odd. Even saying it out loud, I feel kind of silly about it because I love talking so much. So don't feel bad. It happens to everybody. I especially really struggle to say things that rhyme. I'm never worried about how cool I look. That's just not something I really concern myself with. But when it comes to rhyming out loud, I have this simultaneous fear of sounding like a really nerdy white person trying to rap, which is uncool. It really is just uncool, okay? I live near Detroit in Canada, so there are a lot of nerdy white people that try to rap around here. Not always a good look. And I'm also really worried about giggling because I feel silly and being totally disrespectful. And I know that my giggle is just because I'm uncomfortable, but I don't want to disrespect anybody or knock anyone out of that right headspace, right? Knock them out of their spiritual reverie. I don't want to do that. And I feel like if I'm involved in the speaking of the spell, that will happen. I've also felt like I didn't have the right tools or herbs or anything at all. I don't have all the things that a big Wiccan altar demands. And I used to really care about that, right? Because at first I was a Wiccan specifically. I also can't get a hold of a lot of very witchy herbs, the cool witchy stuff. Most of the stuff I can get is a little bit boring, or I can only get it in small amounts because I have to, wildcraft it or something. I don't have a gigantic collection of pure essential oils and everything from rose to hibiscus to black pepper, although I wish I had all of that. I often use pre-made spell candles, pre-made magical oil blends. I read spells out of books, or I look them up on a website. I get a lot of spells from Pinterest, straight up. And my spells don't always look cute. Like, they don't look like the stuff on Instagram. And all of those problems seem really insignificant when I say them out loud, but that still gets into my head, right? And then it gets in my way. As I've gotten older and a little more experienced, I feel this less and less and less. But I am still, to this day, learning to trust myself, learning to trust my intuition, learning to trust any sort of psychic vibes that I get. I have a problem. That's my phone. Isn't that fun? Isn't that a fun ringtone? So I'm still learning to trust all of those things, and I'll probably always be learning that. That seems like a lifetime thing for me. But that's okay, because, I'm getting more and more confident the more I try. And that's really the main point here, is that when you worry about all of these things and you never get started, you never get the practice you need to honestly just have any confidence to do this stuff at all. So, like I said, this is very common. And this is especially common for those who have been reading a lot about witchcraft and haven't tried spells yet, or who are very new. It's okay. And there's a lot of stuff out there. It can be a little overwhelming. So I'm gonna give you some tips. This is how I got a little bit more comfortable. So one way that I was freaking out about spells is I needed to feel prepared, and I needed to feel supported in that. I needed supportive energy, but I didn't really want someone else there. So I started by following spells that came with very specific instructions from like Wiccan specific sources. I've mentioned Wicca a lot, and that's because Wicca is like the main witchcraft based religion that's out there. It has the most amount of information that you can find, and it's all very structured and organized. There are lots of different traditions that work for a lot of different kinds of people. And those traditions then have an organized structure, and they lay out exactly how to follow spells and rituals. They have incantations and invocations already created. You can find, pictures or charts that show you how to set up your altar according to what this tradition demands. It tells you how to follow the moon, what colors to use in ritual, all of that. So if you start with Wicca, which I did, all of a sudden you just have this perfect recipe to cast a spell. Think of it like learning to cook or to bake. The first time you do it, or maybe it's just me, but the first time or two that I make something, I'll follow the recipe. And I'll just straight up follow the recipe. Unless it says don't add any spices, and then I do anyways. But I digress. After I do that recipe one or two times, according to what it says in the book, I start to put my own spin on it the next time I make it. Eventually, I keep spinning it until it becomes my own dish that only kind of resembles the recipe. Unless the recipe was excellent, then I'll probably just do it perfect every time and add something extra like vanilla or garlic, and people will freak out. It's the best. So you can do this with magic spells. When it comes to Wicca, if you want one that is very structured and laid out, and that teaches you how to do all of these things in a specific manner, Alexandrian Wicca is a lot like this. I went to a few little classes. They were Wicca 101 that were taught by someone who is a practicing Alexandrian Wiccan with the Church of Witchcraft or the Church of Wicca in Toronto. And she had these rules and recipes and instructions for absolutely everything. And that was super, super helpful when I was really, really young, because I'm just like that, right? I'm that kind of person that reads the rules to the board game every single time I play the board game, and then I keep them handy throughout the game so that I can refer back to them. It's not cool. It sucks. Don't play Monopoly with me. It's not fun. So, it's not fun. I'm uptight. And I'm also simultaneously someone who gets very, very irritated with being told what to do really fast, right? I want to do it my way now. So after performing a spell, according to the instructions or the recipe, if you will, once or twice, I get the hang of it and I'll start leaving stuff out or adding stuff in. If I don't like this, I bail. If I don't connect with this, I bail on that. I'll write out my own spell if this one just doesn't read like me. I used to keep little notes and, I would keep little notes about how it went, how I felt about the spell, and if I noticed anything over the next little while, I'd write it down there. And eventually, when I looked through all of that, I figured out a formula for creating spells that worked for me. Oh my god, saying that out loud is so much nerdier than I thought it would be. It's so funny. I was such a bad student when I was younger, but I was always this type A busybody. It's really funny. Such a Capricorn. So there's no one specific method of performing magic that makes it a spell. There's no actual checklist of you have to do these 4 things for it to count as a spell. I wish I could give you that. That's a nice little, that would be very nice. But that's not the way it works. There's no set amount of or type of ingredients. There's no mandatory length of time your spell has to last unless you're working within a specific tradition. But all that stuff for the spell, that's selected by the person who creates it to help lend energy and magical support for whatever the purpose of the spell is. And that's why making your own spells is eventually the best way to go. For a million different reasons. I mean, you're the only one who can make a spell that is fully and 100% all you. And this is if you're doing a spell by yourself, by the way. It's a little different in a group, but even then, those members of the group creating that spell is still the best way to go because you're trying to put your own energy in there. So reading spells that other people wrote, you could end up with spells that include nothing but European ingredients and you live in Australia or South America. That's not necessarily going to work for you, even though the spell seems great every other way. So I like making my own after trying out a few. But the best way to start doing spells is you have to cast one. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to cast a spell here. I'm going to bring you through it, and at the end, we're going to have a little prosperity spell that you guys can try right now with stuff that's in your house, or later tonight, or whatever. And we're going to start very, very simple. We're going to start simple, and we're going to learn to play to our strengths. So, if you're very crafty, you can start by using a spell that is, where you make a mojo bag or a little poppet or something you make with your hands. Like maybe you like carving candles. I love carving candles. If you are a dancer or a singer, you can create a dance or a song that says all the things that you want to say and, helps you work up your energy. If you're a writer, you can write killer incantations and poems and invocations and stuff like that. That's what incantation and invocation, that usually means something spoken. It's like a spoken word spell. Just figure out what kind of person you are and how you personally use energy and express yourself. That's where you got to start. And don't try to start with anything that requires really crazy things. So skip the medieval herbs that you could never get a hold of. I mean, if you don't, I'm not even going to give you a bunch of lists because I love sketchy witch herbs like mandrake and poisonous belladonna and things. But I mean, get real. I'm not going to poison myself. I can be clumsy and, I don't want to go all out like that. Don't start with things like blood. Blood, whether it's yours or someone else's, that is not a first time spell ingredient. If the spell tells you to light 1,000,000 candles and leave them lit all day and night, even though you have an apartment full of curious rescue cats and go to work all day, don't do that. Don't pick those spells. You want to start simple. There is only 2 reasons that you would select one of these damn near impossible to perform spells for your first time. And I'm serious about this. Reason number 1, you are giving yourself an excuse to bail out. You cannot handle super poisonous hemlock if you don't know what that is, and your best friend is not about to let you cut her palm, so it's perfectly reasonable for you to cancel the entire idea of the spell. Just bail out. You know what? It was too much. I gotta stop. And if you have a really outrageous spell, it's way easier to talk yourself out of it. Way easier. So don't do that. Reason number 2 is a little bit more subtle, but you are struggling with the idea that magic and witchcraft can even be real. That's hard for you to deal with. And again, no judgment at all. You're clinging to these very, fantastical and arcane ingredients or wacky methods from hundreds of years ago because somewhere you don't really believe that there's a place for magic in your modern lifestyle. Again, it's okay. It's one thing to, try to get yourself into a witchy kind of zone. It's one thing to leave out electronics so that you can get into a more spiritual frame of mind or environment. That's a really cool, healthy boundary. But I mean, you don't actually want to become Merlin and put on wizard's robes and hold a big staff. I mean, unless you do, that's totally cool. But if you don't want to do that, that's totally okay. So don't try to start with magic that looks that way. You're just getting in your own way. You're just putting boundaries and rules on yourself that you can't possibly work with. And so you got to stop doing that. Again, no judgment, because I did all of that. I absolutely did all of that. So don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. So you want to start with a spell that's simple and is actually something that you want out of life, but that isn't really life or death. They're totally time sensitive. If you're about to get evicted, doing your first time spell to stop the eviction, instantly is probably not the best place to start with. Likewise, if you've been, shot, please don't try to fix it with a spell. Please go to the emergency room, stuff like that. So start with something simple, something that you want out of life, but something without a whole bunch of pressure on it. And then start with ingredients that you can get. And I know this sounds like common sense, but this is hard. You can get tons of magical ingredients cheaply and from anywhere around you. You might already have things like salt or rosemary. Like, go look in your kitchen. Look through your spice and herb cupboard. There are magical herbs in there, even if they're powdered or dried or whatever. Clean water. Just regular water is also a very common magical ingredient, and I'm sure that you can get some. I hope so. I really hope you can get some clean water. It's okay to use, tea light candles or birthday candles from the dollar store that are super cheap. It's okay to use your kitchen herbs. If you can't find white sage in a nice big bundle where you live, but you can find it in like a cheap incense stick, perfectly fine. Totally cool. If the spell you like calls for very rare or very expensive crystals, I can guarantee you that a stone or two that are more common can definitely provide you with comparable energetic support. Clear quartz can stand in for any crystal. I'm sure you've heard that said before, and it's true. Clear quartz is it's the crystal, right? You could be holding any crystal. Clear quartz has that fucking vibe. I can't believe I just swore. That's really funny. I'm passionate about the clear quartz. It's also very widely available, very pretty. You might even live somewhere where clear quartz grows in the ground naturally that you might be able to dig up. Look into that because it's very cool. If you've been a witch a long time and you have a whole bunch of fancy stuff and fancy crystals, very rare, very expensive, don't be afraid to bust that stuff out because that's awesome. But just don't get too wrapped up in the details. You know, what really matters is your purpose and your intention. All of that other stuff is kind of just extra support for you. You are the magical tool. You're the magical tool that you want to use. These other things just, you know, help you out a little bit. So, starting now with your intention. This is your goal for your spell. So, maybe this is a spell to attract a new job, or to clear negative energy out of my house, to help give me the energy to accomplish something, or to open the third eye and increase psychic abilities. Which is, that's the kind of spell I do a lot. I use a lot of magic to do more magic. I don't know if that's cool or not. I haven't decided. Whatever. I mean, like, whatever, witch, you know, it's up to you. You can make any kind of spell that you want. I like to think on it for a while. I like to write it down. I love to grab an actual pen and paper and a notebook and start writing it down. And until my hand feels like it can't write stuff anymore, that's how I kind of like to do that. I write it down and I write it down and I refine it until it's a statement that I feel comfortable about writing and that I feel comfortable saying out loud, even if it's just a whisper for now. And again, I'm talking about doing a spell on your own. Doing ritual with a group or a coven is like kind of a whole topic in itself. So work on this intention statement, or it can be a whole novel. I mean, it's up to you. But you want to make it flow and fit you. It has to be very you. This is an expression of your spirituality, your personality, and whatever your goal or purpose is. So if Shakespearean English is very you, totally cool. Go with it. Or maybe Rihanna lyrics is more your style. That's sick, and I'd love to hear it. If you speak a language other than English that you feel expresses who you are even better, I say go for it. Even if it's Pig Latin or Klingon, you go for it. Because what really, really matters is that the essence of that spell, the core of that spell is you and your magic and your hopes and dreams and goals. Once you have all of that stuff sorted out, the rest of it will just fall into place. I'm not going to say it's easy and it'll literally fill up on the page like magic, but it'll fall into place, I promise. So, now, if you're listening and following along, if all you have is your intention and maybe just a plain piece of quartz, you absolutely have everything to cast a spell. I'm serious. Even if you don't have the quartz, if it's just you can totally cast a spell. But there's no shame in loving the stuff. Or wanting to have some more energetic support, wanting to work with these natural items and bring that stuff in. What you need now is something called, very unsexily called, magical correspondences. It doesn't sound fun or beautiful, but it is. These are lists or charts, and they tell you what magical energy corresponds with what real world items. So, you know, amethyst means this, and chamomile means that. Things like that. You've probably seen pages in grimoires or books of shadows or spell books on Pinterest or in Google Images. And it's all just the information about the phases of the moon and their magical meaning, or herbs, or, you know, holidays and seasons and what they mean in magic. As someone who loves lists and charts, my old book of shadows from when I was a child, which I have right here, by the way, we're going to be reading out of this later. Crazy. It's like reading from an old diary. It's really embarrassing. So, full of these charts and graphs and lists and things like that. And from there, you just, find items that match up with your purpose and that feel right for you and that you can actually access. It's okay if that takes you a little bit of time, but just don't get too hung up on coming up with everything that corresponds to the energy of the spell anywhere in the world. You don't need all of that. I actually think this is like a big problem for a lot of witches out there. You know, you want to wait until you know absolutely every magical correspondence for absolutely everything before you jump right in. Or, you know, if you're not talking about casting spells, maybe you need to completely memorize the exact meanings of all 78 tarot cards before you can even begin to read or throw down a spread. Again, I totally get it. I totally get it. You know, you don't want to, you hear this all the time. You don't want to mess around with something that you don't understand. You know, you can't practice witchcraft without understanding it. You can't be a part-time witch. I get it. And it's really nothing to be ashamed of. It means that you're taking it very seriously, and that's good. But you're also getting in your own way. It's too much of a good thing, right? So what you're going to do instead is start with one spell. One. You're going to pick a spell that has a clear intention. You're going to find some things that correspond with that one spell, and then you're going to try that out. You're going to see what you think. You're going to see what you feel. Maybe you don't like using a spell that has lots of different magical ingredients. Maybe that's too confusing. Maybe you like something more simple, or vice versa. Maybe you want to use more than just that quartz crystal. Maybe you do want to break out an entire garden's worth of herbs. That's cool. Maybe you don't like making physical objects. Maybe you don't like carving candles. Maybe you want to just keep it energetic or vocal or, you know, whatever. You'll find out when you do any kind of spell. It doesn't have to be anything specific, any kind of spell. Once you try it out, all of this stuff will start to fall into place. So, let's make a spell. If you want to follow along right now and get a little organized and make yourself a little spell, take a minute and look into the description of this episode. There you'll see a link to a download. It's a PDF called a Spellcasting Record. It's totally free. It's basically like a worksheet to help you collect the kind of correspondences or items needed for your spell, and then record how it went or how you feel about it. I even put some links in there so you can go to a bunch of correspondence tables from Wikipedia, which are very, very good. And I also linked to a few blog posts on my website that feature correspondence type info. I made correspondences a category on my website too, so you can search that way. And this PDF, it's based off of one that I used as a kid out of Silver Raven Wolf's To Ride a Silver Broomstick from 2002. I've just been using it and refining it over the years. I actually have like a photocopy of that page, like glued into my old Book of Shadows. I'm looking at it right now. I used it to create a spell. So cute. So fun. Okay. Once you have your PDF here, right away you'll see you have to have your goal or intention, like I mentioned earlier. You really want to narrow it down so it's precisely what you want, or you can also leave it a little open for unexpected blessings or magic. So you can say, you know, I have enough money to cover my mortgage or rent, and my living situation feels stable. You always want to have it in the present tense because you're embodying that energy, right? You have the money. You can cover your rent this month and your living situation feels totally stable. Or you can also go with something like, I am financially solvent enough to be able to afford the perfect home for me. This way, you know, if the universe thinks your apartment now is garbage or overpriced or, you know, not the right one for you, and if the universe is thinking it, you've probably already thought that once or twice. Instead of just bringing in the money to pay your rent, it will instead steer you toward having the money to afford whatever home you need. So maybe it's a new house, maybe it's renovations, maybe it's, you know, in a new country or city. Whatever. Maybe it's your current apartment now, but maybe it's not. Neither of these intentions are wrong. They're both great. One is just very precise and for a specific issue, and the other just opens you up more to the possibility of a big change in this general arena of your life. It's still specific without being too specific. Either one is great. Next is your timing. So when are you going to cast this spell? You can record things like the moon phases, any sort of astrological events going down at that time. For example, this Friday we have a new moon coming up. So Friday the 5th, yes, we have a new moon coming up. And we're in Aries season, Aries sun season. And I can't remember, the moon might be in Aries as well. Yeah, because it's a new moon. So the moon and the sun are both in Aries. So there's, your astrological kind of event for this time. None of it's mandatory, but I really like moon phases. I've always liked the moon. I like to look at the moon and watch the moon and pay attention to it. I love it. So I like to use particular moon phases when it comes to casting spells. And this gets kind of confusing for people because there can be a million of them. But I have the best way to remember the energy of the phases of the moon, okay? So I want you to picture the moon like a big glass bowl, a clear glass bowl. Very pretty, right? Like a round fish bowl. Excellent. So at the new moon, like we have on Friday, the bowl is pretty much empty. You might see a little sliver of light in one part of the bowl. Every night when you look at your bowl, more and more light fills up your pretty little moon bowl until it's completely glowing with light. Now is the full moon, which would be April the 19th. That's right. April the 19th, also a Friday, is the full moon. Then the light slowly filters out every night until the new moon comes back around again and it's empty. When the bowl is empty at the new moon, you have space to bring in more and more light. So this is the time to cast spells to start new things or to attract new things, to bring new stuff into your life. Every night that bowl is filling up with light, or as we say, the moon is waxing, is a great time for any sort of attractive magic to bring stuff to you. Once the moon is full, it's ready for absolutely anything. Any magic is really great at the full moon. Anything. It can even be kind of outrageous wishing stuff. Any kind of spell, any kind of ritual, the full moon is just a perfectly magical time. But when you look at that bowl, there's no room left in the bowl. There's nothing else we can cram in that bowl. It is completely full. And we can't just leave the bowl full forever. There'll be no space for us to bring in any new light. So now we have to clear some of that stuff out. As the moon is waning, or that light is filtering out night after night after the full moon, this is time to use your magic to clear things out of your life. Clear out roadblocks, clear out spirits, clear out negative energy, clear out whatever it is, until you have room again to fill it back up with that light or that magic. It's almost like those thermometers they use to track donations to a fundraiser, right? Like 90 degrees, we're getting there. And that's how I think of the moon. I think of it as a vessel for magic, a nice big glass bowl. And when it's filling itself up, or when that light is filling up that bowl, I get very excited to bring in new things. And after the full moon, I feel very, after the full moon, I sleep. Because I don't sleep well during the full moon, according to my sleep app. So I sleep. But I also start, I clean out my house. I clear the energy in my house. I burn some sage. I just clear up and clear out and get ready for the time to get back into a more energetic kind of magic, I guess. So let's use our home example, your apartment, having the money. So if you want to cast a spell at the new moon, you can cast a spell to find a new place or to move to a new city. When that moon is waxing, you can attract in money. Like if you want to just bring in the rent money, this is a great time. Or maybe you're trying to sell your house and you want to bring in buyers for the house. So you want to attract people to check out your open house. That's all great between that full moon or that new moon and that full moon. You can also wait for the full moon and cast any kind of spell. So you can bring in money, you can bring in a new house, whatever. And then, as the full moon starts to wane, you can clear out any sort of roadblocks. So maybe your job is keeping you back because you're not getting paid enough, or you don't work the right amount of hours, or maybe you're just in kind of a dead-end job. Or maybe you have fears about money or about moving that are keeping you from making more or from living in a place that's better for you. Now, you can do just one of these things, one single little moon phase, or you can stretch a spell out over a month's time, and you can use each moon phase to complete all parts of your plan. So let's say you want to do kind of all this stuff. You want to bring in money to pay the rent now so that you can clear up any debt, so that when the time comes to move, your credit rating is excellent. You can, which is like, oh, what a pain in the ass. I hate using words like credit rating when I'm talking about magic, but, you know, it's the reality. It's the reality. And then you can use, you know, some time to attract buyers to your house or attract a new apartment to you. You know, maybe you want it to come find you. You can use the full moon and get everyone together and wish for your perfect new place to live, or wish for your perfect financial situation, I guess. And you can also just celebrate at that time. Celebrate your magic. And then, of course, start clearing stuff out. Start bringing stuff to donation. Start clearing out bad energy in your house that's maybe keeping you from loving it or keeping other people from wanting to buy it. It's great. So you can use the moon as it changes, and cast a whole bunch of different kinds of spell for the same purpose. But if that's a lot, which is okay, and you want energy that's a little bit more static or just fixed in place, the days of the week all have their own correspondences. I actually I love daily magic. I love magical correspondences. I'm a nerd. So I posted about this at length on my website. If you go to thefatfeministwitch.com and you can click Witchy Weather Report, it's the first blog post there, you'll see magical correspondences for all the days of the week and how to use them. So for our example here, it's money related, sort of. So Thursdays are the day for any magic about money, prosperity, abundance, finances, business, job, whatever. If you want to focus on the home aspect, I really like Sundays. Sundays just mean home for me. If you have a day where you're always at home, where you always do your housework, or where you always have your whole family together, something like that, any day that really resonates with home is a good day to do magic with your home or your house. I like Sunday. If you like to work with deities or gods, goddesses, Loa, Orisha, spirits, angels, ancestors, any of those friends, and the ones that can lend some specific energy. So, you know, like if it's a love spell, you're going to call on Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. For money, you'd want to call on Fortuna instead. Fortuna is the goddess of fortune and money and success. Or if you like Norse deities, Thor is actually the patron god of Thursday. Thorsday. I like to say Thorsday because it makes me laugh. But Thor was not just, you know, the god of thunder wielding the hammer, but he was a god of abundance and healthy crops. You know, he was a god that signaled abundance and prosperity. So if you want to work with that type of energy, you can, but you don't need to, just in case. Next, you got to pick a location. Location. And this is hard for a lot of people because you like privacy. Or maybe you feel a little self-conscious about, you know, someone seeing it. I get it. I totally get it. I live in, like, the core area of my city. So the houses are like, you know, a 1-year-old baby's arm length away from each other. I can reach into my neighbor's house and grab, you know, a cup of sugar without even asking. Not really, but you know what I mean. And we do not have big private backyards or trees in the way or anything. You know, not everyone's got a sacred oak grove or a big, beautiful wisteria that's been twisted up into a tree in the backyard. That second example is actually, my friend has it. Like an arborist lived in the house before them, and they grew wisteria in like the middle of the yard, and they twisted it up until it was like as thick as a tree trunk. And then they built a little, like, just a square structure so that the wisteria could grow over it. And now it's like this gigantic wisteria tree that you can go underneath. Oh! Not everyone has that. The most important part is that you feel safe and comfortable and that you can get into a really good, either emotional or psychic space for magic. You can get yourself into the zone a little bit. It's a safe place to do that. That's all that really matters. And finally, we come to our stuff. So let's stick with our example that we talked about and pick some basic stuff. I love a really big candle spell where you carve everything out and you put in oils and glitter and herbs. But not everyone loves to do that. I'm just crafty, so I like to do stuff like that. So something a little bit more simple that you can do for a spell instead is a talisman. So you get a talisman. A talisman is a regular object that you then charge or fill with the kind of energy you need to accomplish your goals. In this case, you might want to choose something that comes from your house, or a fancy coin, good luck charm, a piece of jewelry. It can be a ring, it can be whatever. Just something that you can keep with you, that you can hold. It can even actually be a crystal. So a green or gold crystal like jade or pyrite or aventurine. Those are all really great for bringing in abundance. Even your jewelry stones, so emeralds or peridot or the green spinel, like the one that's in my spinel or spinel, whatever it is, the one that's in my college ring. All of these are still really, really great for money, prosperity, and abundance magic. If you want to use natural witchy stuff like sketchy herbs and oils, go with things that are green and hardy and very earthy. Patchouli oil's my favorite. It's my favorite. It's my favorite in general, but for money especially, because patchouli is all about luxury and it's very, very earthy. So I love it. Peppermint is another one that's great for bringing in money and is a little bit more universally acceptable, I guess. You can also use common witch herbs like cinnamon and bay leaf, which I'm sure you have in your cupboard right now. These are both powerful money attraction herbs. Seriously, almost every single oil blend that I purchase that is money or attraction or prosperity or business themed all has cinnamon in it. It's really cool. If you have an altar space that you're working on, you can decorate it in green and gold, or nice browns and rusty oranges if you're going more for that stable home vibe. You can put little houses right on there, break out your Monopoly. Just don't play it with me. You can, put things that represent your home or that represent prosperity. You can get green and gold candles if you can find them. Stuff like that. Once you've got all of that stuff that you're going to use, we're going to work some magic. It's really fun. Working some magic. So I like to create sacred space, which means I essentially lay out kind of a spiritual barrier for me to work inside. So this can be as simple as energetically cleansing your space. Get yourself some sage or some incense. You can use music like drums or bells. You can use water, herbs. You can throw those around, salt. I like to burn herbs or even incense that matches my purpose and kind of let that fill the room, get all around me. I have a bell that I love to ring, and I always, always, always have a playlist going because I am a nerd. Big nerd. And all of this just helps me get into the zone. If you want to go all out, you can find instructions for casting a circle. And I'll put a link in the description to some instructions. I haven't decided which ones yet, but I've got a few links. I'm just going to see which one's the best. So I'm going to put in a link for how to cast a circle, just some traditional ways. And if you wanted to invite any spirits or gods or ancestors or just acknowledge them, acknowledge the moon, this is the time when you would do that. But I don't really invite gods or anything into my space. So I don't have any specific instructions for that. That's something that's kind of specific to each god and to you and your relationship with them. So if you're working with any gods in particular, I would do a little bit of research on them specifically. Or skip the gods. Go with the moon until you're more comfortable. Okay, so in front of you here, on your little altar or table or anywhere else, you have your little talisman. You have your intention that you wrote down. If you wrote it down, you don't absolutely have to, but I like to. And whatever natural items you choose. So if you have some crystals or whatever, I like the patchouli and I like the bay leaves. So hold your talisman in your hands and focus on what it is that you're working toward. Mentally or emotionally, I want you to feel that intention bond with the item in your hands. Some people like to imagine light building in their palms that then surrounds the object, linking you together. You can imagine a green or a gold light if that sounds good. And you don't actually have to see this in your mind's eye. A lot of people have trouble with the visual part of visualization. But I really want you to feel that. Feel that energy. And then grab that patchouli oil and put a little bit on your fingers or whatever oil. When I do this, I like to then dab some on my third eye, between my eyes here, to help me tap into that psychic place. So now you're going to take your oily finger and anoint or dress your talisman with that oil. And you can either speak your intention or you can think it real hard. I like to whisper it at first and eventually I end up saying it. But I also repeat it. I repeat it until I get into I get into the rhythm of what it is that I'm saying. Maybe my body will start to move, or I'll notice that every time I say it, it goes to the same beat or rhythm. I know that I am in the right place to cast some magic. I have done what people call raising energy. I'm very much into music and rhythm. So even if it's not a song or something, even if it's just a sentence, eventually I will get into a rhythm with how I say it. That's how I work. So if you're a really great writer or poet or something, please don't let me discourage you from writing this long, beautiful incantation or poem with your intention woven into every sentence. I mean, that just sounds beautiful. Even if it rhymes, don't let me make you feel like none of that stuff is okay. It's totally great. It's so up to you. And honestly, I love it. I love those big, beautiful, rhyming, witchy charges and incantations. I like to read them as poems, for reading. Doreen Valiente, who wrote most of the original materials for Wicca, was just a beautiful, beautiful writer, very poetic. And her words really flow. And they are honestly damn near hypnotizing. You can really get into it. I like that. I like listening to other people recite these incantations. I love it. I just don't like saying. But Ellen Dugan actually wrote something that really shook me up in one of her spell books. When it comes to the rhyming, I've always hated the rhyming and I talk shit. But what she says, and she's right, is that rhythm is part of the universe. Everything has its own rhythm, and rhythm is hypnotic and engaging. So when your spells rhyme and they have a rhythm or a beat, it's much easier to line up with it instinctually, like I was saying. So maybe your movements line up with it, or maybe the way you're breathing lines up with it. It's a lot like dancing. If you're someone who never gets lost in the music and every dance step you make is very intentional or purposeful, I'm so sorry, because there's nothing like that feeling, and that's the feeling you kind of want to create. You want to get lost in it. So even if you don't love those rhyming couplets, just try to feel the rhythm of your intention and the words of your spell. If you've ever heard spoken word poetry, you know it doesn't have to rhyme to have a rhythm or to have a beat. And this doesn't have to be totally serious. I mean, one time, literally, I spoke my intention aloud to the rhythm of Cream by Wu-Tang. Totally worked. It was a great money spell. Cash rules everything around me. My God. Thank you, Wu-Tang. So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be Shakespearean. It can totally be Rihannian instead, and that's totally fine. So you've got your intention. You're working up your energy. and you are using that oil to just surround your object or even a little dot just to anoint it. It really just bonds it all together. I also like oils because the sense of smell, it activates your brain, right? It activates your memory, and that helps keep me focused on my intention. If you don't like the oil, you don't have to use it, but that's why I like it so much. Then you want to place your talisman on your altar. It can be on a plate or something, or just on the table, and surround it with bay leaves. You can use a magical number like 3. 4 is a number for stability. 8 is the number for infinity, and it also represents the seasons of the year. So that's really good if you want to have money coming in at regular intervals. And with each leaf that you place there, I want you to imagine yourself living in this reality where the spell has already come true. So, you put your leaf down and you feel yourself living in a home that you absolutely love. You put a leaf down and you imagine that you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have a home to go home to, or whether or not you're going to have the rent money, etc., etc. You don't have to see anything in your mind's eye, like I said, but feel it. If you don't know that feeling, just go with the exact opposite of how you feel about money now. Like, I relate real hard. We're all poor. Don't feel bad. I like to have the bay leaves pointing at my talisman and feeling like they are lending or transferring their own innate magical energy, because they're natural items. I kind of feel them transferring it into that talisman. It's a grid with everything pointing to the talisman in the middle. You'll know when you're finished doing this as well. I mean, continue to do this until you feel satisfied. And then collect your talisman, and you can put it in your wallet or above your front door or wherever you keep financial stuff, wherever makes the most sense for your purpose. I even like to scoop up the talisman and the bay leaves that I used. You can put them in a really small bag and turn that into a mojo bag full of all the energy that you need, that you can then keep in your pocket or your purse. I love mojo bags. I think they're really cute. And I mean, that's it. That's the spell. What really matters is how you feel about it, how it makes you feel, and how you then react afterward. I like to make a whole night of it and do some tarot reading or meditation, but I always have to have a snack and some water after I cast a spell. It's like running a marathon. It can take a lot of your energy, so make sure right after you're done you can sit down or eat or ground yourself in some way. Some people like to take a shower or a bath. That's really cool too. And then over the next few days or weeks, note if anything changes. Now, if you cast this spell and then do absolutely nothing different to change your situation, you'll probably not see any difference. Don't resist any changes. Don't resist events that seem out of place. You need to try new things. So if your job is the thing that is holding you back, after you cast this spell, it's time to pull out some resumes. Hand out the resumes, keep your mojo bag with it. You can even, use the bay leaves and get some of that energy right there on the resumes. Rub it on. Rub it on, make it all smell real nice. And wear that patchouli oil or any other sort of financial or business or successful oil when you go out and look for a job. Very perfect. If you ever feel that your focus on your goal is waning, just reach for that talisman and reconnect with the energy of your spell. Especially if you use something with a scent like the bay leaves or the oil, every time you pick that thing up and hold it near your face, that whole experience will come rushing back, and all those feelings that you felt, because that is just how strong smell is with memory. This can even be a permanent talisman that you're going to use all the time. And you can repeat the spell, at the same moon phase every month, or every other Thursday, or every payday, or, whatever works the best for you. And that's really it. Once you get more comfortable, you can add in more things if you want. Or if you didn't feel like you needed any of this stuff, that's okay. Simplify. There might be a wrong way to cast a very specific spell made by a very specific individual, But there's no wrong way to cast spells and make magic in general. All you have to do is try. You have to start. Wow. Okay, this is going to turn out to be a pretty long episode. I hope that's cool. Because I have some more stuff to share. So, I want to tell you guys a little bit about the first spell that I ever cast. And as I said, I have my old Book of Shadows here, so you can... Yeah. You can hear it. This spell... I'll explain it as I go. Let's do this. So... The spell on here, it's just titled Dream Magic on page 22. But I'm actually going to read how I wrote this out because it reads exactly like the rest of this episode. It's really cute. So, step 1, determine precisely what it is you want. Oh, okay. Yeah, I will explain this. So, this is a dream magic spell, a dream pillow. And it's a dream pillow to communicate something to someone else while they are dreaming, just for a little context. So determine precisely what it is you want the person to hear or perhaps feel. Write down your wish on a piece of paper in simple sentence form. Step 2. Make a dream pillow using a small square of fabric and cotton batting. Throw in a pinch of lavender and a pinch of rosemary. Put the paper in last and then sew up the end. Put the dream pillow on your altar. Do an altar devotion to center yourself. Then create sacred space. Cast a circle and call the quarters. God, I was so extra. And then it says, if you like, but it's not necessary. Little baby page. That's cute. Step 4, center yourself and hold your hands over the dream pillow and say the following. And then in brackets, feel free to change incantation to suit your own purpose! ! That's so funny. I talk exactly the same way. So here's the incantation. So cute. Holy Mother, Goddess Divine, I stand before your sacred shrine. This person, or their name. So let's say, like John Smith won't listen or hear. My words tickle at deafened ear. Holy Mother, Goddess Divine, send a dream, awaken the mind. Through their vision, they might live. It's another fill in your own. Let's go with lesson, they so freely give. Holy Mother, Goddess Divine, send them your enchanted design. Clear out the cobwebs, tear down the walls. Carry my message through spirit calls. I have no idea where I got this spell, or if I wrote it. I don't remember that part, but I very firmly remember casting this spell. I remember everything about this dream pillow. I remember I used fabric that my mom gave me that had been brought from, it was Holland at the time, but the Netherlands. I thought that was really cool. It was a family heirloom type fabric, so that's what I used. I used paper that was purple because purple is the color of dreams. For lavender, oh my god, it's so funny. So what I had was a bar of soap. It was lavender soap. It was one of those homemade bars of soap from like a craft fair or a farmer's market, and it had real lavender on it. So I remember just scraping off the top layer that had all the lavender and using that in the pillow. Oh, ingenuity. And then rosemary, of course, we had in our kitchen because I am Italian, and if there's no rosemary in the kitchen, I can feel it. I know if it's missing. So I did this spell to communicate with a friend who was a female friend, not John Smith. But I did this spell to communicate with a friend that she had hurt my feelings. I was not very good. I'm still not very good at expressing my feelings in person to another person. I'm just, I have a hard time with intimate moments like that. I get uncomfortable and I giggle. So it's very hard for me to tell somebody anything really, really personal or intimate. And it's twice as hard for me to tell somebody if they've done something that's upset me. I'm getting better. But especially as a young person, I just did not have the guts. And that's what drove me to cast this first spell. I was trying to do anything I could to avoid just having a conversation with my best friend about the fact that she'd been like a total bitch. And she had been a total bitch, I'll tell you what. High school was a fun time. This was grade 9. And I firmly remember the following Monday when gym class came around and we were all, changing our t-shirts. We'd already made up by then because straight up, that's just how kids' fights work. And she was telling me about this totally wacky dream that she had had the night before that I was in. And I tell you, she straight up was like, wow, you know what? I realized I had been kind of a bitch last week, so I'm really sorry we had a fight. And before, we had just gotten over it because, it was the weekend and we were bored and we wanted to talk on the phone. But we actually cleared it up on that Monday sitting in that change room. And I didn't tell her I'd done this dream pillow spell. Why would I do something like that? That's wacky. I didn't tell her I had done that, but I just remember when she said that, my whole body started to buzz. Like I felt just vibrations everywhere. And it was so cool. And not every spell I ever did worked out like that. In fact, that was probably one of the most immediately successful spells I've ever cast in my life. I was just so into it. But I did have a really great experience. Now, did she have that dream because of my spell, or did she have that dream because, our fight had been weighing on her on her subconscious? Who knows? But either way, I felt very vindicated and I felt very powerful and very empowered in that moment. And up until that point, I had been really struggling to cast any sort of spell. I felt very uncomfortable. So in this book, that page where that spell is page 22. It's the first spell I ever cast, but it's on page 22 because up until that point, I had been collecting spells that I thought I might want or need, as well as the correspondence tables. And looking back at this now, oh my god, so many of these spells are like so sad. I had so many bad confidence problems. Like I have invisibility spell to change eye color, confidence spell, wish spell, true beauty spell to be seen more attractively, strength spell, and I'm only at page 9, y'all. And for whatever reason, I didn't end up doing any of those. I did the dream magic spell, and I ended up feeling really confident from that. I never ended up casting most of these spells that sound real sad. I didn't want to be invisible. I didn't care to be seen more attractively. I didn't care about this true beauty spell that uses so many ingredients, like a dish full of earth, a yellow candle, a full-size mirror, olive, patchouli, jasmine, or cinnamon essential oil, a small flower pot, a flower or plant seed. It just went on forever. Confidence spell, a lion head charm, yellow candle, essential oil of rose, orange, or hazel. Some of these had wacky ingredients. So yeah, it's just the kind of spells that you focus on are always something that you really need. So don't force yourself to do any kind of spell. I gave you all those instructions there, but don't feel like you need to force yourself. Don't feel like doing spells is the only thing that will make you a witch. But also don't get in your own way. If there's something that you want to work towards, that you want to put your energy towards, go for it. Keep it simple. Start with what you can do and just trust yourself. If it doesn't go the way you want, maybe you don't get the results you want, that's totally okay. It's totally okay. Because every spell works differently. A lot of spells are not going to come out with this clear-cut movie magic style solution that is going to be very obvious to you right away. That's just not the way things work. As I explained with the intention, sometimes, the universe has got its own ideas. And whether it's the universe or it's God or it's the goddess, sometimes they're trying to steer you somewhere specific. And you need to kind of just trust it. And don't be afraid to continue to work with it after. Don't be afraid to do that. But don't ever feel like you need to know every single correspondence. Don't ever feel like you need to be able to do that without looking at your phone or at the book. The reason these spells are written in here, before I had ever cast any, is so that I could use the book when I wanted to cast the spell later, and I didn't have to connect to the dial-up internet and bring up the Yahoo group where I no doubt found some of this stuff. So that's the first spell I ever cast. I still love dream pillows. I make dream pillows for lots of things. I don't do it for the communication so much anymore, though maybe I'll try to give somebody a sexy dream about me. Oh, I never even considered that because I did this when I was a kid. But you could totally rework this spell to have someone have a sexy dream about you. That would be so fun. Maybe I'll try that and put it on the blog if it works. So that was the first spell I ever cast, and a lot of the spells I've cast did not go that well. A lot of them did nothing. They fell flat, or I completely forgot about them. But others worked in ways that were a little more subtle, obviously. So, to finish off today, I want to recommend some inspirational materials for you. I love it. So, if you want to start casting spells, I have a few books that can really help you, as well as some other stuff. So, first of all, if you want to look at spells, if you want to watch someone cast a spell, and if you like candle spells, and if you like spells that include the oils and the herbs and all of that stuff, go on YouTube and look up Madame Pamita or Madame Pamita's Parlor of Wonders. You can also go to parlorofwonders.com. Madame Pamita has a whole playlist called Hoodoo How To, and she shows you how to cast spells using figure candles or different colors, different oils, different herbs, everything. She talks about incense, she talks about baths, she talks about candles, she talks about making a tea. She even has a spell where you don't need any extra stuff. So great. And watching her do the spells is very like, I don't know if y'all dig Martha Stewart. I happen to like, a lush of an ex-con who's best friends with Snoop Dogg. That's how I roll. But Martha Bakes was what I liked. I liked watching her big hands handling all the baked goods and just, the way she sloppily grabs the flour and puts it in the cup. I love all that. I love watching people do it like that. And she was very entertaining the way she guided you through it. And Madame Pamita is like the Martha Stewart, the Martha Bakes of spells online. I love the spells she comes up with. And I've actually done quite a few, just reworked for my own purpose. Number one, best place to look. After that, and of course, you can find spells all over the internet. You can just Google it, but a lot on Pinterest, stuff like that. But you're going to get 5,000,000,000 results. So let's refine this a little bit. If you want to start casting spells and you want to learn anything you need to know about spellcasting, or you want to learn spells specifically, look for books written by Judika Isles. Judika Isles, she was the one that put out that encyclopedia of 5,000 spells that you can find. That's a nice, huge book. There's also a smaller one, 1,000 spells. And one of my favorite ones is the big book of practical spells. It's actually not a very huge book. It's a paperback. I love it. Everyday Magic That Works. And the book has 2 parts. The first part tells you all about what casting spells are. How do you do that? How do you connect with energy? It has a glossary of terms. It tells you about crystals, about herbs, about certain ways to frame spells. It guides you through creating any kind of spell with any sort of symbolism or purpose or tools that you could possibly imagine. And then the second part is filled with spells, filled with recipes for spells or instructions for spells with all sorts of different materials. Some are incredibly witchy and you can only get them at witchy spots, and some are kitchen herbs or stuff that you have around the house. Judika is the best when it comes to spell books, and I wish I'd had this book when I got started, the big book of practical spells. I think it's actually new. I think it came like last year. I've only had it for about a year. 2006. So a little longer, but yeah, Fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you are into candle spells specifically, which I am, that is my shit, y'all. That's how I roll. My number one favorite, absolute favorite book on candle magic that uses candles, oils, or herbs is Coventry Magic by Jacki Smith. Jacki Smith owns Coventry Creations Candles. Still makes the candles. And this book is just incredible. It's great whether you're looking to work with a candle right now or not. It's a great magical self-help book. It's really empowering. It's really great about getting your confidence up. And it's really fun and funny. Jacki Smith has a really fun sense of humor. I actually reviewed this book for International Women's Day a couple years back. Maybe I'll post a link to that in the description as well. Coventry Magic by Jacki Smith. Absolute best book for candle spells. It will tell you any kind of candle spell. If you liked our prosperity magic, our money spells, Practical Prosperity Magic by Ellen Dugan. Fantastic. She also has Practical Protection Magic, which is just as good. But I loved this prosperity magic book. Not only is it filled with spells to help you, start casting right away, it gives a lot of really great instruction in the beginning, including about the Hermetic principles. So if you've ever been curious about the Hermetic principles, about earth magic, about the elements, about prosperity, about gods and goddesses related to prosperity, it's all in Practical Prosperity Magic. And Ellen is a kind of a classical modern pagan witch. So it features gods and deities, and it features written invocations that are beautiful and they rhyme. And in general, she's just a very creative and planty person. She likes plants. She loves herbs. She's the herb witch. So Practical Prosperity Magic, great for any sort of magical spell to get you money or prosperity or abundance. Love magic is another one. Everybody loves love spells, right? Love spells, my favorite love spells ever come from Love Magic by Lilith Dorsey. This is a book I've raved about a million times. I had Lilith on the show. Absolutely fantastic. These are spells that use a lot of stuff. A lot of them are, voodoo based, and they have quite a few ingredients that are really, really cool. You might not be able to get all of the ingredients of the spells in this book. It's still fantastic. It's full of incredible spells for everything from romantic love to sex to home-based spells, marriage, dealing with family, friendship, everything. It's got modern spells, it's got retro spells, it's got all of it. So Love Magic by Lilith Dorsey. This has got to be like the number one book on love and sex spells that I can recommend. I don't even know if I recommend any others. I think this is really it. It's great. If you want some more general spells, some very modern spells with a bunch of different topics that are social justice based or very emotional and fairly creative, Light Magic for Dark Times by Lisa Marie Basile. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's full of spells and rituals and practices. There's spells for love, grief and trauma, negativity, regeneration, identity and body, shadow work, writing magic, finding your craft, and even some last minute spells, so little tiny spells that you can do on the go. And again, I've raved about this one before. I'm hugging it right now. Lisa, if you're listening, I love you. This is an incredible spell book and is great whether you are a beginner or whether you are already very familiar with magic. Another good classic. Scott Cunningham is a classic Wiccan writer, and he has 2 books on earth magic. So he's got earth magic, and then he's got a second one, earth, air, fire, and water, more earth magic. These are both some of the best spell books I've ever used. The second one, I use a spell out of that book maybe every other time, and I have them reworked to be my own. I can never get rid of that book now. I'm in love with it. Cunningham seemed like a pretty nice dude, so I like his books. I think they've got a really nice energy. And his Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs is also fantastic for finding the correspondences for all sorts of magical plants and herbs and seeds and sticks and things like that. He just, for every single entry, and it's an encyclopedia. You don't have to read a million things. It's an encyclopedia. You can look up exactly the herb or plant or stick or root or whatever that you're using, and it will tell you everything from deities associated to astrological correspondences to how to use it, how it used to be used before in the old days, and how you can use it now. So Cunningham's got tons of spell books that are really fun. The only one I think I fully do not recommend is the Hawaiian Spirituality and Magic. It's just not legit. Don't bother. But but most of the other Cunningham stuff I've read has been really good. And the last one, this is different. I might have to post some pictures later. What I have are Magical Spell Cards by Lucy Cavendish. It's a 44 card oracle deck. And each one represents a different type of spell. So each card, you pull one out. Spell card number 42, Organization. And then you go into here and you find your spell card number 42, Organization. And it tells you what that means, what its divinatory meaning is. And then it gives you a little organization spell. So make a list of all you need to do, then chant 3 times 3. Everything is connected. The power lies within me. Organization can create freedom. Then, each day until the moon is full, take 1 step forward toward finishing tasks on your list. Chant every day and wear turquoise, green, and blue to promote uplifting, confident vibes. That is one of the more simple spells in this little book. And I often find that some of these spells are just so full of stuff I don't have. But the cards themselves, I use them constantly. Because each one has a really great, it has a little image. It uses the colors associated with that kind of spell. Safe home protection is green. Magic powers, these are purple and blue. Psychic protection. There's mermaid magic seduction. So there's tons of really, really fun stuff. These work as a great inspiration for coming up with a spell. If you feel like, I really want to work some magic. I feel like I need to work some magic and I don't know what, or I don't know where to start. You can choose a card at random like you would a tarot. Or you can go through and pick one specifically and check the book, see what that means and what kind of spell someone might do for that particular issue. You can do that spell, or you can make your own based on that energy. I love these. And you can totally make your own. You can make yourself a deck of cards, organization, put a picture on there that symbolizes organization to you, or a symbol. Same with, best possible decision, passion, creativity, financial freedom, harmony. You can totally make your own deck. But yeah, these are the Magical Spell Cards by Lucy Cavendish. This is an older deck, 2002, same year as To Ride a Silver Broomstick. I'm old school today. But yeah, these are a lot of fun. And oftentimes I have a hard time articulating exactly what it is that I need or want. I have a hard time writing my intention. I even have a hard time figuring out what it is that I'm actually trying to do. Am I trying to find love? Am I trying to find money? Am I trying to find a lover with money? What's going on? And because I'm a card reader, my intuition when it comes to cards is one of my better skills. So almost every time when I pull a card out of that deck using my intuition, it is exactly what I needed to hear. Exactly what I needed to hear. It's a thought that I had in the middle of a million other thoughts. And it's the one I should have been able to pay attention to the most. So it, puts me back on track. So those are my favorite sources for spells by other people. There are a million spell books out there. So many. Some are, 100 years old or more. And some are brand new. Some feature stuff and some don't. If you want a book of spells that feature no stuff and is all about, visualization and energy, Holistic Energy Magic by Tess Whitehurst is the best book for that. It will help you with the visualization stuff and doing all sorts of different magic and casting all sorts of spells that don't require all of the stuff and things. It's okay to not want the stuff and things. Okay, well, I think that is the end of our episode for today. It is a lot longer than most of my other episodes. I hope you guys enjoy. Before I get going, I have some fun announcements. So, on Friday the 5th, that new moon at nighttime, I am drawing a winner for a copy of Door to Witchcraft, written by the editor of Witchway magazine, Tanya A. Brown. I'm doing a drawing for that, and someone will be getting a free copy of Door to Witchcraft in the mail very soon. The book comes out soon. So I highly recommend checking that out. Go to my Instagram. So it's Fat Feminist Witch on Instagram. And find the post that says win a copy. It's bright yellow. It has a picture of the Door to Witchcraft. And follow the instructions therein. And Friday night I will be drawing a winner. Probably on Instagram. I might do it live, like on IGTV or something. Also on Friday, the new Chilling Adventures of Sabrina starts, the new season. And I reviewed not only the show, but the comic book that it's based on my website. So you can go to thefatfeministwitch.com and type Sabrina into the search engine there if you want to get a little bit refreshed before the second season. And finally, very exciting, on the full moon, April the 19th at noon, my live Facebook show, Seeker's Corner, is coming back. I'm very excited. I love these live shows. It's going to be a little bit different. Instead of me picking a topic and just throwing information at you guys, I am picking a topic in advance and allowing you to send in questions. So, on April the 19th, we will be talking about the moon. Anything to do with the moon. Moon magic, moon astrology, moon legends or myths or deities or gods, moon spells, any of that, ways to celebrate. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you want to know about the moon, about moon magic, or about working with the moon, even if it's very specific to something you're working on, you can send it to fatfeministwitch@gmail.com. And if I'm going to answer it in the episode, I will send you an email or a message in return so that you can tune in and get the answer. I'll also be taking some live questions, of course, because unpredictability is fun. So Friday night, or Friday afternoon, actually, I guess it would be Friday noon, not after. So Friday, April 19th at noon, EST, tune into Seeker's Corner on my Facebook page, which again is facebook.com/fatfeministwitch. Thank you all so much for tuning in today and learning about spellcasting. If you ever want to tell me about some spell you cast, if this episode made you cast a spell, I'd love to hear about it. You can always contact me through social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I might not get a private message. Those tend to go to other message boxes now, but comments and, tweet at me, whatever. I love that stuff. You tag me in your photos of the spells that you cast if you put them on any of your social media, stuff like that. I'd love to hear all about it. Have a fantastic weekend. A fantastic Aries new moon. This is a very fiery and energetic new moon, so this is probably going to be a pretty interesting weekend. I hope you all enjoy it and that you all find your own way to make a little bit of magic this week.